So, new podcast in the description. Spoke on the Golden State Warriors and their legacy and stuff after their third championship. And then the new Star Wars movie, Solo, review of that. We're going to talk about Dwayne Casey, who is now the head coach of the Detroit Pistons. Can this make a difference for Detroit? Can this get them going on a positive path, or are they just going to lie in this mediocrity while also being well over the salary cap, and is none of this really going to matter? Well, the first thing we should do is just talk about Dwayne Casey. I do think he is one of the better head coaches in the NBA at this point. Sure, I think he still has some flaws. Adjustments in round 2 against the Cavs were not totally there. I think allowing CJ Miles and Pascal Siakam to get switched onto LeBron all the time was not really the way to go about it. I think the best defender against LeBron was OG, and after him I would maybe look to having like Ibaka on LeBron, because at least he's got the strength to match up with him, whereas Siakam had no chance. I also think Siakam could have done a better job on Kevin Love if he had the opportunity. But anyway, that type of stuff I think led to Casey not having the best series against the Cavs. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded him staying as the Raptors coach, but it is what it is. But I do think he can be an okay enough coach, and now he's on the Pistons here, and I think the immediate thing we'll probably see if we can look at Casey's last season with the Raptors is we could see the Pistons moving the ball around a bit more, which I think there's some potential for that, honestly, especially with Drummond's playmaking that became a real thing last season, where he would have the ball on the top of the key, and he would get the ball to like cutters and shooters coming off screens, and he would have some handoff plays, and it improved the spacing of the team, and I think it's just a good start, you know? I think Drummond has some ways to go in that department, but if that's going to be his starting point as a playmaker, then I think that's a good sign, and I think if Casey is going to be this coach who improved Toronto's passing, then I think he could tap into that, and I think the combination of Drummond and Blake Griffin, who are both good playmakers now, that could be something, you know? But what we don't want is a million post-ups. So, while I think Blake can have some post-ups here and there, Drummond should not have them pretty much at all. And hopefully this offense doesn't just become stuck in quicksand with these two, right? Because I believe that if you have Drummond making plays and you have Blake, whose three-point shot has shown some life lately, and then he's a guy who can cut to the basket and go off the dribble and then make passes himself, you actually could have a decently dynamic offense here. And I think the best way to get it would be to have Blake spotting up when they're both in the game, because Drummond, I'm going to assume that he's not going to be able to shoot. He did develop some of his ball handling to where when big guys left him open, he could actually take them off the dribble and finish at the rim, or at least get fouled, to where he could then shoot his improved free throws. But it's still not as good as Blake being able to shoot, you know? And if Blake can just make open corner threes, then that could do a lot for your offense, because you could have Drummond up top, you could have Blake in the corner, then you could have between Luke Kennard and Langston Galloway and Reggie Bullock, and I guess Reggie Jackson as well. He's not the most natural outside shooter, but if he was able to get some open looks, then it's a thing. And they could have themselves some real offense with some decent enough spacing, right? Now, when you have Blake with the ball in his hands and Drummond needs to play off of that, I do think it could be a little more awkward just because Drummond can't shoot. But Blake can also go off the dribble a bit better than Drummond can. And I think he could even have some isolation opportunities in the half court. And, I mean, maybe you could have some, like, Warriors-esque stuff where Draymond will be throwing lobs to, like, McGee or Looney or Bell or whatever. I think Blake could kind of make that happen because I think he has better ISO abilities than Draymond does, to where he could beat some big guys off the dribble, and then you could have Drummond lingering to catch alley-oops and all that. And, I mean, we have to remember that between Drummond and Blake, this team is going to grab some offensive rebounds as well. In fact, if Blake was asked to crash the boards a little more often, that could be a good thing for these guys. And then when we get to the defensive side of the floor, I think these two as a front court, it could be a thing. I mean, Blake has the profile of a good defender. I don't think he's been ever able to totally make it work, but Drummond's made some improvements at defending on the perimeter and stepping up on ball handlers, and the Pistons were a better team defensively with Reggie Bullock in there last season. I mean, could you grow to being an okay defensive team? Maybe. I mean, Dwayne Casey was able to be one of the best defensive teams in the league with DeMar DeRozan and Jonas Valanciunas in his starting lineup. Now, he also had Ibaka, who's still pretty decent. He had Lowry, who's very good, and he had OG Anunoby, who's very good. And I don't think there's anybody on this Pistons team outside of probably Stanley Johnson and maybe even Anthony Tolliver, if he's still going to be on the team moving forward, who can get to those levels defensively. So I wouldn't bank on these guys becoming like a top 10 defense, but, I mean, could they be mid-tier? Yeah, potentially. And I think what could be interesting is Blake Griffin's abilities in transition, because he can go off the dribble, and he can take it full court a lot of the time and draw contact and all that. So that's some more potential for offense. You may notice that I'm mainly focusing on the two big guys. That's because I think that's their best chance of being a decent team, because I still don't think very highly of Reggie Jackson. I know they had a positive record with him this season, but if you go look at the teams they beat, it was all the bad teams. And even so, I mean, just look at Reggie Jackson in a vacuum. I have to assume long-term he's not going to lead to a lot of victories for you. Not to say that he'll make you a horrible team either, but I just don't expect Reggie Jackson to be the leader of a great offense. Over dribbles, not a great shooter, doesn't get to the free throw line nearly enough to make a huge difference. But that being said, can you get some help from Blake and Drummond? Yeah, sure. I mean, both of them are effective rollers to the rim, and Blake seems like he can at least be a pick-and-pop guy from mid-range at least. It's a thing. But I don't think Reggie is nearly good enough of a playmaker or a scorer to allow these guys to be a great offense. However, my guy Luke Kennard, who should be starting at the two-guard position, could end up being one of the more surprising players next season to me, if he's given the opportunity, because the dude can shoot, he's got size, but he also has some ball handling ability, and he's got okay enough athleticism and transition and stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he was putting up like 16 a game next year, which will definitely help out this offense. I don't think he's going to be a guy to create offense for himself or others, at least this early. Maybe we fast forward a few years, he could get to that point. So yeah, I mean, Casey has stuff to work with, but I just don't think there's enough top-end talent on either side of the floor for this team to really be something. I mean, I guess if everyone's healthy, if Drummond can get marginally better as a ball handler, if Dwayne Casey's offense is really there and everybody's executing it basically to perfection, then could I see these guys getting to high 40s in wins? I mean, maybe, yeah. Mid 40s definitely if everything goes well, but, you know, Reggie Jackson's missed time, Blake has missed time, and this roster just doesn't have a lot of great in terms of offense or defense. So I wouldn't be shocked if this was a team that was around 40 wins, but I guess I wouldn't be shocked if they were a little higher as well. But all that being said, I do still like the signing of Dwayne Casey, because given just how bottom of the barrel or how mediocre or like too good to get a high pick but still not good enough to be real exciting this team has been for a while now, if you could just be a 40-something win team for a few years in a row and just be respectable, I'm sure they wouldn't mind that. I mean, it's definitely better than what they've been for a couple seasons now, right? In fact, I saw some people on Twitter that were like, oh, well, they're just trying to be the new Raptors. Listen, the Pistons would love to be the new Raptors right now with how it's been going for them. So I like the signing of Dwayne Casey, I do. I also think Stan Van being there for a while, maybe he overstayed his welcome. I don't know. But it did feel like there was kind of a we need a change aura around the team, so there's that. And I like the fact that it's a 5-year deal, because it says we're going to be locked into this guy for a while. And I do think that's cool because, you know, again, I do think of Dwayne Casey as one of the better coaches in the NBA, and I don't picture someone who's definitely better than him being on the open market anytime soon. Like, between Stevens, Popovich, Carlisle, Spoelstra, I mean, Budenholzer just was, but now he's not, of course. So why not? Like, just guarantee yourself a good head coach for the next 5 years, rather than rolling the dice on maybe one day a great coach becoming available, or you could end up with a bad one. Like, just get yourself a good one, and then hopefully you can just, you know, build something up from there. So I like the signing. I'm not super hopeful of the team itself, but I do think there's some wiggle room to pull out a solid season or a few solid seasons out of this group, and you bank on Luke Kennard and Stanley Johnson's improvement, and hey, you know, it's worth a shot. So, good hiring for the Pistons, and then they just go from here. Once again, new podcast, Warriors Legacy, Solo, a Star Wars story, and that's it.